My grandmother sat by the kitchen window every Saturday evening with her hair loosened down her back, and I can still see the lamplight catching the silver in it. She was past 60 then, though to me she seemed older than the hills and steadier than the oak tree by the wash line. Her hair was not young hair. It had gone the soft gray-white that comes with years of work, prayer, children, grief, and winter mornings. But it was not thin, it was not sparse. When she braided it before bed, that braid was still thick enough that I remember watching her hands disappear into it. I asked her once why her hair never seemed to give way like some women's did after a certain age. She smiled, but she did not answer right away. My grandmother was not quick with answers. She believed that a good answer ought to come with a story, or with work for the hands to do. She reached into the cupboard beside the stove and took down a small brown bottle. That was the first time I saw the oil. In our community, the women before us did not have shelves full of hair bottles with bright labels and promises written across the front. They had what was plain, what was affordable, and what had already proven itself in the homes of mothers, aunts, and grandmothers. For hair that had grown weak with age, after childbirth, after illness, or after too many hard seasons, my grandmother trusted castor oil. Not a scented oil, not something fancy from a shop window, plain castor oil. She used it slowly, faithfully, and with a kind of patience that most of the world has forgotten. And today, I want to tell you exactly how she used it, because the way she did it mattered just as much as the oil itself. There was a warm towel involved. There was a comb she kept only for this. And there was one little habit she never skipped before washing it out. My grandmother used to say that hair is like a garden. You do not shout at a garden and expect it to grow. You tend the soil, you keep it clean, you feed it gently, you wait. The women in my grandmother's time understood that better than we do. They lived close to the land, and because of that, they understood the body as something living, seasonal, and responsive. When the ground was dry, you did not blame the beans for struggling. When the soil was tired, you did not scold the flowers. You gave them what they needed, and you gave it more than once. It was the same with hair. In those days, many plain women wore their hair long for a lifetime. It was pinned up under a cap, covered through the day, braided at night, and washed with care. A woman's hair was not fussed over in a vain way, but it was cared for because it belonged to her, because it was part of the body God had given her, and because neglect shows itself sooner or later. My grandmother had seen women lose fullness in their hair after bearing many children. She had seen the hair become dry and brittle after a fever. She had seen the part grow wider after the change of life came on. There was no panic in her voice when she spoke of it. She would simply say, "The roots are asking for help." That is how she saw it, not as something shameful, not as something to hide, just the body asking for a little tending. The oil she used was castor oil because it is heavy, rich, and clings to the scalp in a way lighter oils do not. My mother always said it was not an oil for rushing. If you put it on quickly, in a hurry before bed, you will make a mess and gain very little. But if you warm it, part the hair properly, and massage it down into the scalp with patient fingers, it has always worked for us as a strengthening oil, especially when hair begins to feel weak after 60. My grandmother kept hers in a small glass bottle. She did not use much. For her whole scalp, she used about 2 teaspoons. If the hair was very thick, she might use 3. That was all. More oil does not mean better care. Too much only sits on the hair and makes it difficult to wash. She would set the little bottle in a cup of warm water for 5 minutes. Not boiling water, just warm enough that the oil loosened. Castor oil is thick, and when it is warmed, it spreads more gently. She never put the oil straight on the stove, and she never made it hot. She would touch a drop to the inside of her wrist, the same way a mother tests milk for a baby. Warm was enough. Then she would take down her hair and brush it slowly from the ends upward. I remember the sound of that brush. It was soft, like straw moving in the barn loft. She always said you should never begin at the roots if the ends are tangled, because then you pull against the very place you are trying to help. When the hair was smooth, she made parts with the end of a wooden comb. One part down the middle first, then one part on each side, then another near the temples, because that is where many women notice thinning first. She dipped 2 fingers into the warm castor oil and touched it directly to the scalp, not the length of the hair. That is important. The oil was for the roots. She would press it in little lines along the part, then use the pads of her fingers to move the skin gently, not scratching, not rubbing hard. Small circles, slow and steady, for 10 full minutes. I know 10 minutes sounds long when you are tired. It sounded long to me when I was a girl, watching her sit there in the lamplight. But my grandmother believed the massage woke the scalp and helped the oil settle where it needed to be. She did not rush it. She would close her eyes sometimes, and her hands kept moving as if she were kneading bread dough, only softer. In my experience, this is the part most women skip, and it may be the very part that matters most. My mother used the same oil after my youngest brother was born. Her hair had begun to shed badly that winter, and she was worried, though she did not say much. Plain women often carry worry quietly. I remember seeing her at the table after the dishes were dried, parting her hair just the way her mother had taught her. 2 teaspoons of warmed castor oil, 10 minutes of massage, a cotton scarf over it for the night. She did this twice a week for 6 weeks. Not every night, not whenever she remembered. Twice a week, faithfully, Monday and Thursday in our house, because those were the evenings after wash day and baking day when she could sit for a little while. By spring, the shedding had slowed, and the little hairs near her hairline were standing up like fine new grass. She never called it a miracle. She would not have liked that kind of talk. She simply said, "The roots are taking hold again." There is another part of my grandmother's way that I want you to understand. She did not coat all of her hair with castor oil unless the ends were very dry. Most of the time, she kept it near the scalp. But when the ends felt brittle, she would take just 3 drops between her palms, rub them until her hands shone, and smooth them over the last few inches of her braid. 3 drops. That was enough. Women today are often told that if a little is good, more must be better. My grandmother never believed that. She said heavy hands make heavy hair. If the hair hangs limp after oiling, you used too much. If the pillowcase is stained, you used too much. If washing it out takes half the morning, you used too much. This is how she washed it out. She did not wet the hair first. She put a small amount of plain soap or gentle shampoo into her hands and worked it into the oiled scalp while the hair was still dry. That helped loosen the oil. Then she added warm water little by little and washed as usual. Sometimes she washed twice, but she never scrubbed roughly. My grandmother always rinsed with water that was warm, not hot. Hot water, she said, makes the scalp cross. That was her way of speaking. She meant it could leave the skin dry and tight. After rinsing, she wrapped her hair in a towel and pressed the water out. She never twisted it hard. Wet hair is tender hair, especially when you are older. After remedying the roots with oil, she also cared for what touched her hair every day. This is the little habit I mentioned earlier, the one she never skipped. She cleaned her comb. Every time. A woman may put good oil on her scalp and then pull an old dirty comb through it, and she has undone part of her work. My grandmother kept a jar near the wash basin. After oiling nights, she placed her comb in warm water with a shaving of plain soap, let it sit, scrubbed it with an old toothbrush, and dried it on a cloth. It seems too simple to mention, but old wisdom is often simple enough that we overlook it. In our community, we were taught that the things touching the body should be kept clean. pillowcases, caps, brushes, combs, scarves. A scalp that is being tended should not be covered with yesterday's oil and dust. There is one more thing she did during the cold months, and I think this may be why her hair stayed so soft even in winter. After she had massaged in the castor oil, she warmed a towel by the stove. Not hot enough to burn, only warm and comforting. She wrapped it around her head for 15 minutes before tying on her cotton scarf. The warmth helped the oil settle. It also made the whole thing feel less like a chore and more like being cared for. My grandmother did not have many luxuries. She did not go away to rest. She did not buy herself little treats just because the week had been hard. But those 15 minutes with a warm towel around her head were a kind of quiet mercy. She would sit near the stove, hands folded, and no one bothered her unless something was truly needed. I think many women need that as much as they need the oil. I know that life outside our community is different. I understand that a woman today may look in the mirror, see more scalp than she used to, and feel frightened. The world is quick to sell her bottles, powders, sprays, and promises. Some of those things may have their place. I do not speak against what another woman chooses for herself. But I do think we have been made to believe that every change in the body must be answered with something complicated. My grandmother would not have understood that. She would have looked at the hair, looked at the scalp, and asked plain questions. Is it dry? Has there been worry? Has there been sickness? Are you eating enough good food? Are you pulling it too tight? Are you giving the roots any care, or only grieving what you see in the mirror? There is tenderness in asking those questions. They bring a woman back to herself. Castor oil was not the only thing that mattered in my grandmother's life. She ate simple meals, she covered her hair, she did not sleep with worry if she could help it, though I know she carried plenty. But when her hair needed tending, this was the oil she reached for, and she reached for it before the hair had become desperate. That may be the lesson. Do not wait until something is nearly gone before you begin to care for it. I can still see her by that kitchen window, the brown bottle beside her, the comb laid across her lap, her silver hair falling over her shoulder. When I asked why her hair never went thin after 60, she smiled because she knew I was only seeing the braid. I was not yet old enough to see the years of care behind it. She told me, hair remembers how it has been handled. At the time, I thought she meant brushing and washing. I understand more now. She meant patience. She meant gentleness. She meant not yanking at what is already fragile. She meant feeding the roots before blaming the strands. That little bottle of castor oil was not magic. It was a habit. It was a promise she kept to herself twice a week, in the quiet, when no one praised her for it. And sometimes that is how the old ways work best. Not loudly, not quickly, not with a label that tells you what to hope for. Just a woman at the end of a long day, warming 2 teaspoons of oil, parting her hair with care, and tending what still belongs to her. If this was useful to you, I am glad. Begin gently. Test a little oil on your skin first, especially if your scalp is sensitive, and do not use what does not agree with you. The old ways were never meant to be harsh. They were meant to be wise. There is more I would like to share because my grandmother had another winter habit for dry, breaking hair, and it began with something most women already have in the pantry. I will tell you about that another time. Until next time, Miriam.